I'm going to bring you greetings from my ancestors who are constantly by my side, who guide every move that I make. I'm going to bring you greetings from my oppressed brothers and sisters, whose journey at the moment is just barely to survive. I'm going to bring you greetings from my free brothers and sisters, who are going to help those who are oppressed be free. And finally, I'm going to bring you greetings from all our unborn, who have put their trust in us to protect their legacy, their future, and I hope one day they will not be standing where we are now. So originally I was going to talk about we invoke our rights to free, prior and informed consent. For some unknown reason I couldn't pull it off the hard drive, so that was a clear indication that I wasn't supposed to talk about it. So what I did is I actually played with TPPA and I came up with Taking Pacific Pride Away. APEC, Ancient Pacific Exploration Compromised. ACP, EU, how about American-China's partnership excludes us? In terms of EPA, how about environmental protection gone AWOL? Okay, so we've heard Santi talk about the monitoring. Originally it was authority, but we don't like that word because, as Santi says, it's quite demeaning. And this is about collaboration. Now, before I actually start, I'd like to talk about a collaboration that happened during the 70s in New Zealand. And I see that I have two distinguished elders in the audience from the Pacific Panthers, Black Pacific Panthers. So if they could stand, I would love it. There's one over there and one over here. I'd just like to acknowledge their presence and thank you very much. But this story goes back to what we colourfully call in New Zealand the Dawn Raids. And basically, in a nutshell, what that meant was that we had Samoan and Tongans brought over to New Zealand to help the New Zealand economy, because it was kind of going downhill, and I'm afraid none of my Balingi counterparts really wanted to do the jobs that were in the factories and cleaning and all that. So my Pacific elders came in and did it. But by the time they'd actually rescued the economy, it was time to do the Dawn Raids. And basically what the Dawn Raids were, I'm not sure if people are aware of it, but what it basically was that you had the police and immigration knocking on homes of Polynesian families demanding to see their immigration papers. And if they didn't produce the papers, they were deported. So what happened was we had a wonderful group in Auckland called the Polynesian Panthers. And what they did is they carried out their own dawn raids. They carried out dawn raids on the Commissioner of Police at 6 o'clock in the morning. They carried out their own dawn raids on the Minister of Immigration. You know, they didn't like the tables being turned, but that was the way our people operated. You know, they fed our kids, they educated our kids, they educated the general community in terms of their rights. Now that is what I call a great collaboration. They were inspired by the Black Panthers of America, so that's what I call a collaboration. So in terms of this monitoring agency, there needs to be a collaboration. However, this cannot take place, and this is what I'm advocating. Some people in the audience will probably disagree with it. I know some people will say we're not having her back to speak at the next one. But you know, that's my byline is like I care. Now, I'm actually advocating that we extend the Moana Nui statement from 2011 and we turn it into a declaration. I think it's time we moved. We've sat on it for 2 years, it's time we extend it. What I have done is I've sent a draft through to 2 people. I wanted to kind of keep it safe. So it's a draft declaration, which is to be at some stage published, discussed, torn to shreds and rewritten. But I had to give you something to start with, so that's what I've done. And I call it Oceania because in terms of the Pacific, I don't actually see the occupied islands as part of the Pacific. That's my interpretation. That's why I've called it Oceania, because for me, under Oceania, you include all those occupied islands. So it's like bringing them back into fold, it's like bringing them back into the family. Now, when we fashioned that statement, or the second part of the statement of Moana Nui, we had to do it in such a way that was Pacific. And I think our elders would have been really proud. There was Santi Hikarangi, Carmen, Paul, Kalikoa, and what we did is we met in the Hawaiian hali and we sat on the floor on top of the whalas. We had a very traditional whono. And before we started that, we started with the ho'oponopono, because I needed to apologise because of my big mouth on the first day. So I needed to apologise so we could clear the air and talk. And it was the only place that we could do it because we weren't framed by time restrictions. And this is what I find really difficult in conferences like these, where we are actually restricted by time. Pacific people, when we talk, we go all round the mulberry bush, we go back round the other way, and then when we actually come up with a statement, we come up with a statement because we actually read between the lines. And that's what we Pacific people are like. And that's why when we actually come up with a point, we really hit the point in terms of the second paragraph of the Moana Nui statement. So that could not have been reached if we were in what I call the Palangi structure. So we had to go back to our Pacific roots, we had to do it that way. So, what we need to do now, what I think we need to do, but I'm not everybody, but it would be nice if you kind of agreed with me, is we actually need to do this charter. Originally I was thinking wider and I thought, oh, let's go for a United Nations Declaration for the Rights of the People of Oceania. And then so it's just a wee bit too big. So I think we go with the declaration. In the declaration, we cover areas that are not covered in the United Nations Rights of the Indigenous People. Under that declaration, it talks about land and coastal waters. What we need to do is we need to make sure that our waters as a whole is taken care of. So we need to make sure that that happens. So we need to write that down and we need to make sure that they hear it. The other thing too is that although in terms of Oceania we are many, many islands, or in the Pacific we are many, many islands, in terms of Oceania, we are one. We need to come back as one. We need to be reading from the same page. All right? Otherwise, we're going to have someone going off on their own agenda, someone else going there, and then next minute, you know, you're back to where you were 25 years ago. So we need to start reading from the same page. And we need to work. We have to stop other people coming in and doing the work for us. We need to do the groundwork. We need to get our hands dirty. We need to work. We need ownership of any projects that we do. You know, when you start off something, you're always going to make mistakes, but that's how we perfect it. So this is what we need to do. A lot of pages here. And it's all rubbish. But anyway, so going back to what Santi was talking about, what he was actually talking about was just a snippet of the monitoring agency. And again, I've actually written an operational manual. I'm one of these people that are quite structured, even though I don't like structure. I've written an operational manual, which is also in its draft form, and basically what it's doing is actually setting out how it should be run. Again, that document it can be distributed, ripped to shreds and rewritten. But like I said, you needed something to start with. Together with that document is also a constitution for the monitoring agency. Same deal, rip it to shreds, rewrite it. But what it actually includes, like, we talked about having panels, approval panels. And basically what happens is that a proposal is actually sent through to a government. Then that agency will actually have to set up a panel who will actually go through the report. What they have to do is they have to submit an impact report, and I'm going to pull a Julian here. Once that has been done, basically what happens, I'm running out of time. Basically what happens is any work that's to be done on any particular island, it is that island's responsibility to actually make that decision. It is their job to actually approve or deny a licence. So that's what we're kind of looking at, but that's the wider picture. I think if we start off with the pack, that's the starting point. That's where we actually start protecting, finding out what resources are unspoiled, look after our traditional history, look after our oral history, put a whole lot of safeguards in place in terms of all that, and then hopefully, with a bit of luck, after today, what I would like to see, when I can find this silly page, here we go. I think if we can kind of walk away, because I think it is paramount that we do walk away from this session with thinking about implementing a program that is not centralised or managed by some bureaucratic funded agency, that we own it. We actually take responsibility of it, we own it. And if we can walk away committed to maybe a dozen or so little operations like in Rapa Nui, Hawaii, Samoa, Vanuatu, PNG, Guam, Fiji, you know, with the backpack concept, I think would be really good. So on that note, very confused, very whatever, and I'm going to say goodbye. Tō whātui fua.